In 1945, Kurt Klein, a Holocaust survivor himself, returned to Europe and saved more than 100 Jewish women who were stranded from a death march. He was one of the 3 million Holocaust survivors. His story starts when he immigrated from Waldorf, Germany to the United States. Before the Nazis took over and controlled all the schools, he used to have a lot of good relationships with his non-Jewish friends. However, after the Nazis had full control of his school, the relationships he had began to change. They threatened him to watch a video with his classmates that discriminated against Jews and showed why they were inferior to Germans. If Kurt decided that he didn't want to watch the video no matter what, he would have gotten sent into a concentration camp. Imagine the amount of psychological pain Kurt must have felt when he was given that decision. It was either a death sentence or lose the relationships that he had built with his non-Jewish friends. After the class watched the video, Kurt could feel how they thought of Hitler as a strong leader, and how they should listen to him, and his friends afterwards began to stray away from him. He would get weird looks after the videos, and his relationships with his non-Jewish friends were eventually broken off. Later on, he said, "It is becoming more evident that the Jews shouldn't be here, if anybody at all." His parents eventually said that there was no hope or future in Germany for the young children, so they decided to go to the United States. His sister, who was training in nursing school, went on a year earlier, and that was actually the only reason why Kurt was able to live. His sister was able to get all the forms that he needed in order to emigrate to the United States. She was able to get an affidavit of support, which ultimately allowed him to get to the US. He was actually very lucky that his sister decided to go on to the United States a year ahead of him. He wouldn't have been able to escape before the war in 1945 otherwise. Once he arrived in the United States, he went to Buffalo, where he then stayed with his aunt and uncle for a few years. His parents, however, was caught up in World War II, and eventually they were deported to Auschwitz in German-occupied Poland. Put yourselves in Kurt's shoes. How would you feel if both your parents would be sent to death, while you and your sister would have to carry on with life? In 1942, Kurt decided to join the United States Army, and he was trained in military intelligence. He then went to Europe, where he interrogated prisoners of war. In May 1945, he took part in the surrender of a village in Czechoslovakia, and returned the next day to assist over 100 Jewish women who had been abandoned there during a death march. Kurt's future wife, who was called Gerda, was one of the women in this group. The amount of pain Kurt must have felt couldn't even be imagined, from the fact that he lost all his relationships, from his non-Jewish friends, and his parents being sent to a death camp. He always asked himself, "Why is this happening to me and my family? We never did anything wrong." The worst part about this quote is the fact that it's true. They truly never did anything wrong, but in the end, their family was broken apart. In such a tragic event, it is important for us to know about Kurt's side of the story and how heroic he was, despite the bad things that happened to him. It is important to remember all these tragedies and unnecessary hardships these people had to go through, so that we won't make another mistake as big as this one. In the end, Kurt Klein died on April 19, 2002 in Guatemala.